Hello, and welcome to the ASDRP Researcher Interview Series. Today, I will be talking with Vaibhav Vaiyakarnam. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And you?
That's great. Yes, I'm doing well, thank you. To kick it off, I would love to hear about how you learned about ASDRP and what got you started working here.
So I actually learned about ASDRP first from one of my seniors who graduated last year. And she was the one who I was searching for opportunities in just chemistry and physics in general, some sort of a research opportunity, trying to grasp at straws, whatever I could find. And she said, you should really go to ASDRP. And they have a lot of really good research opportunities in these fields. When I started off, I didn't think I realized the scope that ASDRP had to offer and the sheer dedication there is in kind of emulating graduate level research. But after that, I decided I did some more research into ASDRP and all the facilities they had, and I was really, really stoked. I was very interested. I applied via their website, and I somehow managed to get in. And for the last 4 semesters, I have been working. For the last 3 semesters, I have been working in a project that's been going on for the last 4 semesters in the quantum physics group. So yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm so glad it's been a good experience so far and that you made your way here. What high school do you go to?
I go to the Quarry Lane School in Dublin, California, in the Bay Area, and I am in the 2023 graduating class.
Nice, wonderful. So at the end of next year. And so how long have you been at ASDRP? I know you mentioned 3 sessions, but in years, how long is that?
That would be from fall 2021. And I expect to stay here until I graduate next summer, until I go to college.
All right, awesome. So what are some of the things you've been working on researching this summer?
So as I had mentioned, I am one of the co-coordinators of the quantum physics group, and we are working on calculating atomic energies. And we've been doing this for the last 4 semesters, as I had mentioned. So basically, we use this computational method, a computational chemistry method known as Hartree-Fock, that allows for an approximation of atomic energies. Usually for atomic energies, we have to use what we call the Schrodinger equation, one of the most famous equations, almost like a buzzword thrown around whenever someone mentions quantum physics, it's all Schrodinger. But his equation is basically one of the most fundamental ones because you can calculate the energy of a hydrogen atom. But beyond hydrogen, since there's a repulsion between multiple electrons, the equation actually falls apart. So instead of directly solving it, we need to approximate it. So we use computational methods, and we've been experimenting with different sorts of approximations, of which one of them, the main one we are focusing on, is called the Hartree-Fock method. And so we've been looking at the different avenues through which we can approximate the energy and which ones are more efficient, which ones have the least runtime, and how we can use these in applications in the various fields that it is used in. So yeah.
All right, that's amazing. Wow, quantum physics. And how did you get started? What made you interested in researching that?
I think that's a great question. One of the major things that inspired me for quantum physics was I've always been interested in finding order and clarity. But then only, after I got introduced to quantum physics as a whole, I realized it's not about finding order, but it's about understanding how order changes, how everything, there's a saying in my mother tongue, the only thing unchanging is change. And quantum physics represents that. I think I had a complete shift in mindset around 8th or 9th grade. That's when I realized, how about instead of getting bogged down with instead of not getting bogged down with on order and all of that sort of things, quantum physics represents a new avenue of uncertainty, of understanding how things change at a particle level and how we can study it to gain more information about how the universe was formed, how it behaves now, and how we can use it to guide development into the future. And this is one of the things that inspired me to also, of course, research in quantum physics. And I've always been interested in doing that. But like I said before, I never realized the scope of how much I would be able to research in ASDRP. And ASDRP and all of its resources have provided me an amazing opportunity to go ahead with quantum physics and quantum chemistry research. So I have to thank ASDRP for that a lot.
Wow, what an amazing answer. I love the saying, and I love how you connect it to the bigger picture. What are some of the applications that you see this quantum research applying to?
Of course. So again, that's a great question. A lot of people, I suppose, as a preface, a lot of people tend to get scared around quantum physics, or a lot of times it's viewed as the sort of, kind of no man's land where it's just people go there and they don't understand anything and it has no applications and stuff. But it's really surprising. It's almost like astonishing. Everything at a sort of higher level right now, when we're looking at computational biology, biochemistry, chemistry, and physics, everything has a basis in quantum mechanics. Not only so, the project that we're working on is kind of on the border between quantum physics and quantum chemistry. That's just a scale where quantum chemistry is atoms and higher. So application of quantum mechanics, that is modeling the behavior of motion of small level particles. Chemistry is atoms and higher, physics is atoms and lower, very heuristically speaking. So when we look at the applications, we can use it to not only look at the motion and interaction between particles, but also how they, like after they form molecules, how we can find out the ways they vibrate, for example, or their stability, and even potential reaction mechanisms to find what we call analogs to these compounds. We used it. So because of that, quantum mechanics is used in almost all of the fields of material science, biochem, organic chem, pharmaceuticals. And it's also used in quantum mechanics is of course used in particle physics, that's subatomic particles, and a lot of other mechanics research on into motion and fluid dynamics as well. So it's unbelievable, really. And of course, that's also not, one more addition would be, of course, the emerging field of quantum computing, which my good friends at ASDRP are also working on. So it's wonderful to see so many people actually getting into these sort of fields and, going in like headlong straight into these fields to actually explore the future, really.
Yeah, it sounds like there's so much potential. It's amazing how much you know about this, especially as a high schooler. It's so impressive and so amazing, all the work that you've been doing. Did you have a background in any sort of chemistry or physics before you joined ASDRP?
So my greatest inspiration for actually joining quantum physics and quantum chem is my grandfather, and he is still a chemistry professor. He's been teaching it for about 60 or 70 years now, since he was
Wow.
quite. I know, right? Exactly. He was one who he's throughout my life, he's been such a big inspiration, because not only has he pushed me to actually think, and apart from being like teaching me what he knows in chemistry and physics and all of that, and the background I had. I will come to my academic background soon as well. But he was the one who, pushed me to actually explore into why things are the way they are, especially at like the quantum realm. And he said, there's always going to be something that you don't know, and we don't know as humanity. It's about actually going into the weeds of those, like getting into the weeds of the uncertainty and the unknown, and pushing ourselves, challenging ourselves to actually get to know it better so we can use it later to understand who we are and how we work as a whole. So that was my inspiration, of course, and academics wise as well. He was the one who kind of gave me the sort of this mindset to pursue. But I was in the IB curriculum, in IB, the middle years program, and that's what actually really inspired me to look at these connections within the sciences, and that gave me, I was in the IB program completely in MYP, and I also did a AP Physics 1 and chemistry as well, and that's what really pushed me to, that gave me the background to do this, along with AP Calculus later with all of this. But I suppose one thing I do want to say is the quantum, really getting into quantum physics or any of the quantum groups doesn't require a lot of the fundamentals I'm saying, because it's also about learning on the job. That's one of the skills I realized that only after joining. I didn't know a lot of the things before I joined. Whatever the foundations may be, it's always a new start for everyone who actually gets into the research field in these subjects, because there's just so much more to learn. And even if you don't understand the math behind it, because it is a lot of complex abstract algebra as well at that level, heuristically understanding the theory behind it and why we're doing what we're doing and how we can do it using computer science and the interdisciplines and all of that, I guess that would be the biggest takeaway from quantum physics as a whole as well.
Wow, yeah, that makes sense. I had no idea how interdisciplinary such a specific subject could be. Um, with your research, I'm wondering what have been some of the challenges that you've encountered?
Uh, First of all, I would say it is quantum physics. So like I mentioned, of course, there are always, like when we started off as well, there were a lot of teething problems, not only regarding like communication and all of that, but in general, everyone comes from so many different backgrounds that you need to accommodate, and certain people, like the foundations and the instinct they have to try and research and all of that, they come from very different backgrounds. So I suppose one of our major challenges when we first started off is trying to homogenize it, kind of more or less, to make sure everyone had like a level playing field basically, and they knew like all of the prerequisites, or like gained a general idea of what we were trying to do, so we could go ahead and do it. And the second thing was, of course, communication, and like actually getting I suppose, since we're an asynchronous group, ours is a computational group, so we don't actually go to the lab. We access the ASDRP cluster from home, and we can do all of our calculations as such. That gives us much more autonomy of our work, but that also has the side effect that everything has to be done asynchronously in meetings. We have a lot of international students in our groups as well, a lot of people from Turkey as well. So to accommodate all of that was a challenge in the first few semesters, but it was about working together. I think the biggest way we work together to try and go overcome these challenges, especially like quantum physics. One of the biggest things to keep in mind in like these fields is to have an open mind, because it's always a constant stream of new information that's kind of saying, okay, everything you've learned before this is completely untrue and nothing makes sense. But that's the point of quantum physics. It's about trying to find a semblance of certainty within uncertainty. Getting that mindset was the hardest part for a lot of people. But it's I mean, now that we've been doing it for 3 semesters, I think we've got a much better idea of how we can get this sort of research done. We've been getting a lot of progress, because once research starts and once we actually like hit the floor and get everything running, it goes by it's a blur really. So yeah.
Wow, I'm really glad your group has been able to overcome the communication barriers, and it sounds like you guys have moved on to just doing such amazing work. I'm wondering what an average day of research looks like for you, especially in an asynchronous group. And you mentioned you were a leader, right? Or a coordinator? So what does that entail also?
So one of the biggest advantages of, I suppose, I mean, I of course will be speaking with a bit of bias, but one of the biggest advantages I think in being in an asynchronous group, or being in an asynchronous group, is that we get an autonomy to manage when we want to access the cluster and where we want to access it. We can access the cluster from wherever, basically, if we want to. I was in Santa Barbara last week, and I just got an idea for something that we were pursuing. And we're currently in the process of selecting a new proposal for a new pathway for research, because our previous one kind of concluded. So I just like, whenever we just get ideas, we can log on to the cluster whenever we want to and get our research done, which means that it's not like we need set research times. So it's much more, I wouldn't say erratic, but kind of like quantum physics. We just go with the flow. As stuff comes in, as research comes in, as we get new ideas, we can immediately implement them because we have all of the software ready and remote. So apart from that, all we need to do is just communicate. And how we've structured it now is that instead of just like having weekly meetings, We also have personalized channels, not only on Slack, but also on a variety of different messaging platforms. So that allows us to be very in tune with what we are doing and also with what all of the other, so I'm one of the McMahon groups. So Dr. McMahon's groups, we're all very like interconnected. So collaborating with the other groups is also great because a lot of them are also asynchronous and computational like us. So getting to know what they're doing, and like, for example, quantum computing is also doing something related to molecular geometry. So we get to learn from them as well and implement like other suggestions they give into our stuff. And the schedule is a lot more flexible, shall I say, compared to like being in the lab and, you know, going there and doing work. That doesn't mean that it has lesser work. Rather, it means there's more work usually that needs to be done, because not only is there research, the added, I wouldn't say problem, but thing we need to, you know, overcome is that we also need the foundations of understanding what quantum physics is. So how we usually structure it is, first few weeks is getting to know each other and getting to know what, like, why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it. So just the foundations of quantum physics. And then we actually start our research, because by then everyone has all of the fundamentals required and they've also changed their mindset completely. So now they're looking forward to what's new, what's unknown. And then we start research. And then after we start research, everything just goes back. It just goes past like very, very fast. All of our things are mostly just Python based applications running on Jupyter Notebook on our cluster. So we can get things done like very quickly after we get the programs done and after we figure out the quintessential troubleshooting, of course, the troubleshooting aspect and the bugs in the program. I hope that answered the question. I hope I didn't.
It definitely did. Yeah, I asked kind of a long one. It sounds like such an immersive research experience, and again, it's just so impressive, the level of thinking that you researchers are doing, and just the work that comes out of ASDRP is so incredible. As a final question, you've already offered a lot of wonderful advice just as you've answered the other questions, but I would like to know what advice you'd give to a future researcher looking to join ASDRP.
ASDRP offers a very unique branch of research. It's like it. I mean, having seen and having looked at other like college level graduate research programs as well, ASDRP is at par with graduate research in the way that the things are conducted and the general manners in which things are done. But you know, for a lot of high schoolers just coming out of high school, it's always, you know, it's this constant stream of thinking about classes, academics, tests, and all of that. But really, science isn't about just looking at the classes and grades and whatnot and just like investigations and stuff. It's about the biggest thing I would recommend, especially as a science researcher and as a quantum physics researcher. There are a few things. The first thing would be research is very different. You need to take ownership of what you do. If you find out something, you need to figure out, how did we figure that out? How can we improve on it further? And if there were errors, why were there errors? If you made a mistake, you have to take ownership for it. Don't feel afraid that it's going to affect, you know, something, because it's not like academics or something where it's like your grades are gone. This is research. Like if there's a mistake, it's about figuring out how can we fix the mistake and move on without wasting time, without wasting energy. And how can the mistake also inform us on how we can make our processes more efficient in the future? Most importantly, it's about having an open mind, because anything can happen in research. So you have a lot more autonomy, but that means that you also have a lot more risk, and it's about understanding that. There are two laws that I tend to quote a lot of times. One of them is Murphy's law, which is if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. And some people add an addition, at the worst possible time. The second law is Hofstadter's law, which is research will always be longer than expected, even if you take into account Hofstadter's law. So both of these, I think, were actually getting to know these and using these in research was an entire paradigm shift. So I would advise everyone joining ASDRP to just keep an open mind and just, you know, relax and enjoy research as a whole, because it's driven by you. You are the researcher. You're not just a student. So yeah, it should be about it.
That was so much wonderful advice. Wow. And such a wonderful interview. Thank you so much for talking with me today. It's truly incredible the level at which you research, but not only are you doing the actions, but you can talk about it in a way that makes sense to me who has no experience with quantum physics. And I know anyone who would watch this interview would really feel excited about the potentials of not just your research, but everything else ASDRP has to offer. So thank you so much for joining me today. What a wonderful interview. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.